Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ayanda Boroto, and I just want to welcome everybody to, I'm going to call it the first annual Women in Writing workshop that is hosted by Pensalp, because even though Pensalp does host these writing workshops, this one is specifically aimed at women in the writing sector and in our country. And so I just want to say welcome everybody, and maybe say happy Women's Month to all the ladies out there. Happy Women's Month is in Bogota. Thank you to Pensalp and all my panelists who are here. I'm going to introduce you a little bit later on. And thank you to everybody who's joined in live. Thank you so much. Your input is most welcome, and of course you can send questions. I will try and attend to as many as your questions as I possibly can later on in the program when the panelists are having a discussion. I'm going to try and attend to your questions. Just a little few house rules for my panelists. Please, if you're not speaking or doing a presentation, can you please mute so that we don't have feedback from you? That's just very important. Yeah, and you know, I'm excited. I really am. I'm excited about this workshop. I get a lot of questions, DMs about how to get into the industry, how to get your books published. And I'm especially excited because one of the key things that this workshop is trying to look at is to give opportunity or to level the landscape in terms of participation for women, and I suppose especially women of color in this sector and in this industry. I myself am an author. I haven't introduced myself, but my name is Ayanda Boroto. I'm an actress and I'm an author and I'm an activist. And I'm very much aware of some of the challenges that we have in the industry, especially in the publishing sector, especially when it comes to African content, and also distribution, accessibility for content of our people. But I think those are issues that we'll get into as we keep rolling the ball. I just want to start off by saying Jhumpa Lahiri, this quote by Jhumpa Lahiri that says that the beautiful thing about books is that they allow you to travel without moving your feet. And I love that quote because it kind of reminds me of my childhood and times when I used to love reading books. You know, it wasn't always possible because we didn't have enough money to always be able to access books and buy books. So one would read mom's books and maybe read books from the library. But one of the reasons I think that this workshop is so important is that you know, when you're looking at language and relatability in terms of content that we're seeing, it's for me as a child, I was robbed of that because the books that I used to read back then were Your Sweet Valley High, and those books used to transport me into a world that wasn't my world because I'm a Zulu girl, KZN born, just like Mama Petra, Durban born, and I, you know, those books like that for me, even though I love them because they were popular, I couldn't relate to that kind of context because they transported me into a world that I couldn't relate with. And I just yearned for books that transported me into a world that I understood. You know, this romanticized version of Western culture was something that I didn't know and I didn't understand. Mina ezintombi yakaZulu bengishayelwa. So I wanted books that spoke about ukushayelwa, and those books weren't available. So I think this is why this conversation is important today. And thank you so much to Pensalp for seeing this opportunity and making sure that this opportunity is presented to the people. And of course, it's at a time when we can't meet, and I think in a way it's a blessing in disguise, because the fact that it's virtual means that we can have more people tune in. Accessibility is really important. So thank you so much to PenSouth for the opportunity. I am now going to introduce Mrs. Pritha Dabedin. I'm going to call you Mama Pritha. Please allow me, because I'm Durban born, and I'm raised to the Mrs. thing for me doesn't work very well. I'm raised to give you honor and respect as umama ofisizwe. So allow me to call you Mama Pritha. Mrs. Mama, I'll call Mama Dabedin, is the Deputy Chairperson of the PEN South African Language Board. She is an admitted attorney of the High Court and has over 26 years of practice in law. She runs a successful general legal practice based in Durban, which has been operational since 1994, when we got our freedom as South Africa. Welcome, Bogoto. Welcome, Deputy Chairperson. I believe that you're going to welcome us all. This is your platform as PenSouth, so I'm going to hand over to you to give us a proper welcome as Umama spearheading this operation today. So thank you. Please, if you can go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning, Sawubona.
Sawubona, Mama.
Molweni. Dumelang. Goeiemôre.
Good morning. Sawubona, Deputy.
Thank you. And yes, to the program director and my fellow sisters, I greet you in the name of our powerful forebears, namely Lillian Ngoyi and her compatriots of the Revolution of 1956. As I welcome you to the home of the Pan-South African Languages Board, let me take this opportunity of sharing who and what PenSouth is. PenSouth is a constitutional organization. It was established in 1995 to support and safeguard the language rights of all South Africans. It's an organ of state. It's subject only to the Constitution and its founding legislation. And it must perform, like all women do, its duties without fear, favor, or prejudice. PenSouth exists to promote multilingualism and social cohesion in South Africa. The current board of PenSouth was appointed in March of 2019. We are 13 board members, and of which only 4 are men. So we are blessed in that we are led by our chairperson, Dr. David Mashlamela, and we have a fairly inclusive board where the leadership of women is greatly encouraged and supported. So why this writers' workshop for female writers in this Women's Month was selected simply because it's in the furtherance of our mandate to protect and enhance language, to promote reading. And we've also identified that female authors have suffered injustices for far too long, which we seek to correct. So today, as I welcome you to this webinar, I want to encourage a very frank discussion of how we overcome these challenges that female writers experience. For instance, how many of you feel that we are socially and culturally programmed to curtail the thinker or the writer in us? How many of you have modified your creations to suit the way society wants you to write? How many of you feel that as women, we are expected not to cross a certain point in our writings, that we are overburdened by the fears of stigmas, that we are weighed down by too many taboos. Women, for instance, with kids and a job, have it especially tough because there's no real downtime. When do you get the time to be creative? When you are exhausted. So today, as we deliberate, I want you to search within yourselves and explain to me when there is an article or a review, etc. Why is it necessary that the review must somewhere there contain a statement that this is a woman writing, even if it's unintentional, but the unverbalized between the lines is it's a great piece for a girl. When you write about male characters who do questionable things, they are described as daring. But when you write about female characters, it's unrealistic or damaged. That's what it's described as. So, my sisters in the literary world, have I instilled some thought-provoking ideas in you? Have I ignited the passion that will encourage you to go on and become our next South African award-winning writers? As I close, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the entire board of PanSALB and wish each and every one of you a wonderful Women's Month. And I hope that you seize the opportunity this webinar affords you today. And even remember the words of Anne Rice, who said, to write something, you have to risk making a fool of yourself. But just go on and try. Thank you.
Mama Preetha, thank you so much. Thank you so much for those wonderful words, and of course reminding us of the beautiful spirit of the women of 1956, Mam Lillian Ngoyi, the Helen Josephs of this world. Thank you so very much for that. What I take away from what you shared with us is the importance of being able to write our own narratives as women. I have often said that the biggest injustice that has ever been set upon women is that women have never really had the opportunity to write their own narratives about not just who they are, but the kind of lives that they want to live. You know, our entire identity has been stolen from us. And I think, you know, what you're raising is so important, because here we are presented with an opportunity to rewrite that narrative in the way that we want to be represented in society. And I think the time has never been better, where women are finding their voices, where women are challenging the status quo. It has never been a better time for us to write without fear or favor, and to claim back that power, use our voice in those books. So thank you so much. I'm gonna have to let you go, but I hope you're going to have a good day today, and I hope you'll be listening in outside of the broadcast. Thank you. Alrighty, that was the Deputy Chairperson, Umam Preetha Daverdeen. She has just left the room, and I'm now going to welcome Dudubusani. I don't know if she is logging in, but I'm going to welcome Dudubusani to now join us as the panelists. Even though I'm going to hand over to Angela first, Angela Makolwa, to start the conversation. So what our program looks like today is we are going to have Usis Angela Makolwa, who's an author, talk about or give a presentation on creative writing and publishing guidelines, which I think is such an important aspect for those of us abazamayo ukungena into the writing space. Kubaluleke kakhulu ukuthi sazi ukuthi mangabe sibhala kahle kahle sibhala kanjani nanokuthi industry sebenza kanjani. Very, very important. There's a lot of red tape in this industry. It's difficult to crack it in the publishing sector, but I'm sure she'll give us tips as to how as to how to make it easier for ourselves, and especially as African content writers. And then Ududu Busani will then join us a bit later, also now for a presentation. She's also an author, and her topic is Indigenous languages and literature and self-publishing. I'm very interested in that presentation. And then a little later on, the panelists will have a discussion. We'll then be joined by Dr. Mam Dolly Lavani. Much later, we will all be having a discussion. Again, I'm encouraging you to please send through those questions if you have any, so that we can address them later. Mangabe sesixoxisana kabanzi nama panelists ami. Right. So I just want to send a shout out to a few people that I've seen who have joined us. Uyonela Kuba, Uzanele Maponya, Ustolile Ngobo, Buntu, George Mani, Nelisa Luniga, Carmen Hartog, Bridget Crone. Just want to say hi, guys. I can't send a shout out to all of you, but I just want to recognize you and honor your presence with us this morning. I see Miriam Martins says good morning. Also, she's from Cape Town. So we have people joining us from all over. Ulerato joining us from the Free State. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming through, and please do send through those questions. Okay, I'm going to ask my panelists, if you are not giving a presentation, please mute your mic, because the feedback comes through and it is a little bit distracting. I'm going to introduce Usis Angela Makolwa. She has I have a bio, so I'm going to read her bio. Sis Angela Makola is a South African author. She's the first Black writer to write a crime fiction in South Africa. She worked as a magazine journalist and public relations consultant for several agencies before establishing her own public relations firm, Bright Spark Communications, in 2002. She came to the literary scene in 2007 with Red Ink, the first crime fiction by a Black author in South Africa. Since then, she has published 3 novels: The 30th Candle in 2009, her third novel, Black Widow Society, in 2013, and The Blessed Girl in 2017. Sis Angela, welcome. You are muted. I can't hear you. I can hear you now. Welcome. Hi, Sis Angela. I can't hear you from my side.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you. Perfect.
All right. Sorry.
This is revolutionary. This is revolutionary stuff. Like this is standing ovation kind of stuff. You know,
Thank you.
writing a crime fiction as a Black female. You know, what inspired that? Tell me what inspired that.
So working as a journalist, I was covering the crime beat, and so there was a huge criminal case. It was actually involving a serial killer at the time, and I was covering that case. And when the man became incarcerated, I reached out to him to interview him because I wanted to find out, you know, kind of why he did what he did, because he was brutalizing South African women. He was killing specifically women. And as a young woman at the time, and I suppose as a brave young journalist at the time, I really had this need to uncover what was behind this person's motivations. And so I wrote him a letter and I went to see him. He was then incarcerated at the Pretoria Maximum Security Prison. It's Moses Sithole. Let me just get it out of the way. So I went to see him. I started talking to him. I started interviewing him. And the point was to write a biography around, you know, his story, why he did what he did. But I suppose, you know, I mean, the relationship kind of fell to pieces, I suppose, because of, I don't know, the type of person that he is and the kind of expectations he had. but I'd started writing something, so I sent it off to a publisher, and because I told the publisher about the whole story, and they were fascinated by it, and so the publisher suggested that I fictionalize the stories, you know, because he thought it was a strong story and it needed to be told, and so that's how my debut novel, which is titled Red Ink, that's how it came to be.
Okay, and how much interaction did you have with him?
A lot, because
in your research, so you had a lot of
because
interaction.
remember, yeah, because I had to do a lot of research, so I had to conduct visits at the Correctional Service Center where he was jailed. I had to go see him a number of times because it was hard to record. You're not allowed to record conversations with a prisoner.
Yes.
So I had to try and kind of memorize what he's saying and then get home and type it up on my laptop so that I don't forget the details. So yeah, so it was quite a fair bit of interaction. You look scared.
I see. No, quite honestly, I am. But I think you wouldn't be, because you worked in the field and there's so much that you saw. But I think, once we have that conversation later on as the panelists and we're having the discussion, it will be interesting to get into your mind about that process. But for now, I want to go straight into your presentation. For time purposes, I want to go straight into your presentation, where you are presenting on creative writing and the publishing industry. So I'm going to allow you to do that. So what's going to happen is that the people who are viewing this are going to see a screen. So you're going to share with us your screen, and the people who are viewing are going to see your screen. So I'm going to give you time to allow you to do that.
Okay,
take it away,
perfect.
Angela.
All right, perfect. Can I just give a preamble on the presentation? So I thought it would be useful because I'm assuming that a lot of the people that are tuned into this webinar are budding writers, or maybe some of them have started their writing process. So I just kind of put together kind of a masterclass on plotting your novel. It's brief. It just kind of hits some high notes. I'm hoping like some very practical points on how to turn that big story idea that's kind of been whirling in your head into an actual novel, a work of fiction, or even some of the points you could use for nonfiction. So I'm going to jump straight into it now.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, I think I had... I'm going to start it again because, yeah, let's see. How do I go back? Okay, so sorry, I had run the presentation prior just as a dry run. So I see that it's taken me to, all right, okay. So as I said, this presentation just gives you some ideas on how to turn that great idea that you've been having into an actual book. So the first thing we're going to talk about is plot and why plot matters. Okay, so remember, an idea is not a plot. So you may have an idea about writing about some experience or an adventure or whatever it is that the story is. But until you devise it into a type of plot that has sequence, that can keep the readers hooked to your story, then all you have is basically, kind of free-flowing poetry. So plot is all about conflict. It's built upon events that have important and life-changing consequences. It needs a central conflict to keep the pieces of your story together, okay? And then also, it's important that you know that there's different kinds of plots. And I'm going to give you some local examples around that. So you can plot your story around like a theme, like it could be revenge themed, which is kind of a crazy plot, but anyway, there you have it. And for that, I've actually made an example with one of my books. It's also kind of a crime fiction. It's called the Black Widow Society. So in this book, you have a group of women. They kind of well-heeled women who are in gender-based, like who experience gender-based violence in their domestic relationships. So they decide to form a secret society in order to kind of counter this phenomenon in their marriages. They hire a hitman to do their deadly deeds. So it's called Black Widow Society. And then, for instance, a love story. I just made an example from one of our panelists' novels, Show Me the Wife. So that kind of centers around a love story, and that gives you a sense of how you can navigate relationships and so on. Rivalry is one of the themes that you could also explore with your book, one of the plots that you can center your book around. And a great example, local example of this is Ichala la Mawele. I don't know if some of your Xhosa speakers here will be familiar with this amazing book that is set in kind of the 1800s around King Yinta and his twin sons who have this kind of a huge rivalry around which of them is going to inherit basically his legacy. And then grief and loss, again, another great example of a story that revolves around this theme is The Ones with Peppers, which is written by Nozi Zwechele. Rebellion, Dog Eat Dog by Nick Mhlongo, talks about a young man who starts out studying law and then he rebels and pursues something else. Survival is a story written by Lacuna is a story written by Fiona Stickers, who's also one of our local authors, and it's about surviving rape, and it has some amazing plots and subplots around that particular topic. Ambition, one of my own books as well, explores this quite strongly, and you have this kind of Machiavellian character, Bontle Tau, who is determined to live a lofty existence by using older men to get what she wants. She's kind of a sugar baby, or what is referred to as a sugar baby in South African lexicon. And then, of course, you could write your own book. For instance, it could be around catastrophe, which is something that we're all dealing with at the moment. So maybe you could name your book The COVID Files or something like that, and you can talk about how a huge pandemic like COVID kind of it upends the lives of your characters. So there's a lot that you can do with plots, and I've just kind of explored different types of plots that you could pursue to kind of keep your reader glued to the pages. And tips on plotting your novel. So these are some of the tips that I use when I'm starting a new novel. It's always great to start out with, a character biography, kind of give us a breakdown of the kind of characters, or give yourself rather, because you're the writer at that point, a breakdown of the kind of characters that you have in mind, because then that helps you to start thinking about how their story is going to develop. Right? What are their characteristics? What do they like? What do they hate? What is their driving force? And then also, what is your inciting event? I actually wish I could read from my latest novel. So an inciting event is something that kicks a whole series of events into motion, right? So it could be, for instance, my latest manuscript is called Critical But Stable. And it starts with a younger man who is staring at the body of a woman that he clearly seems to have very passionate feelings about. So at first he's kind of admiring this body. Oh, she's so gorgeous. But then you realize that there's something wrong in the scene. It may start out seeming like a very romantic scene between two lovers. But then we quickly learn as we read that opening chapter that the woman is actually motionless. And then we realize, oh my goodness, she's actually dead. And she's in this young man's about what is going to happen? What is her husband going to say? What are the authorities going to say? What is he going to do with this dead body? So immediately we are kind of hooked on this because we want to know what happens next. Why is this man with this woman? Why is she dead? Did he kill her? What happened? So and then from there we get into the lives of the central characters, and we realize that the three main characters that are chronicled in the book are all married women who all have some kind of issue in their marriage. So clearly there's a connection between that inciting event and the lives of the women that we are now kind of following. So the tension keeps on building up and building up, because we want to know, is one of these women, the dead body that the book started with? So those are just some of the tricks that you can use to kind of keep the reader wanting more. They want to know what is going to happen next. Okay. And then the other, your character's goal is to avoid some kind of threat, right? So there's got to be a bit of conflict, a bit of tension that keeps us wanting to know more. So for instance, with a love story, it could be that, there's something that stands in the way of the two lovers being together. It could be, maybe it's an interracial relationship, or it's a class issue, it's a wealthy woman and a poorer man, anything like that. So it's quite important to think about building up that tension, because if everything kind of falls into place and everybody's happy and it's all wonderful, I mean, the reader kind of thinks, okay, well, why am I here? Why am I still here? What's going to happen? So the two key elements are motivation. What is motivating this character to pursue whatever it is that they're pursuing, whether it's the love of their life or justice for the downtrodden, or it's a woman in an abusive relationship who's trying to get out and there's all sorts of stumbling blocks in the way, or there's an ambitious young woman who wants to make it and there's people kind of pulling her down, or whatever it is, and of course the conflict. So also, it's important to think about scenes, tell the story in a way that will steer it forward. So we need to move from place A or point A to point B. So that even in the reader's mind, there's that kind of sense of progression and sequence and moving forward, right? And you can aim for one main plot, but of course, like a book can't hang on just the issue of revenge. Within the revenge, there could be love stories that are kind of being woven around that. There could be all sorts of conflict. There could be any number of things, rivalries and things like that. Keep a level of suspense going. I find that, especially with my kind of writing, which I started as a thriller writer. So of course, as a thriller writer, it is important to keep the reader guessing, to keep the reader wanting to know more, yearning for more, and to keep the reader thinking that he or she is ahead of the game. They think they know what's happening. They think they're ahead of the author. But obviously, as the author, you always have to keep a little something so that the reader is like, okay, I didn't see that one coming. And raise the stakes, just when we're thinking, okay, our character survived this hurdle, and just when we're thinking, okay, everything is going to be okay, that little spanner in the works that shakes things up a bit. So you just keep things interesting. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. So there's different kind of plotting methods that you can employ to get your story going. An exposition will introduce your characters. Like I'm saying with my latest novel, Critical But Stable, we start out with the opening scene, but then we leave that scene and then we move into the main characters, the protagonists of the novel. So it's 3 married women, as I said. Each of them has some conflict in their lives. One is dealing with massive debt, but wanting to keep up with the Joneses. So she's this perfectionist who doesn't want people to know that things are there's kind of cracks in her marriage, in her life, The other married couple is dealing with intimacy issues, huge intimacy issues that are a huge stumbling block to their connection to each other. The other couple has a huge secret that they are hiding from the world and are determined to keep from the world. So immediately when you start reading the book and getting to be introduced to these main characters, you already have a sense of, okay, this is who Lerato is, this is who Norma is, this is who Mushidi is. And then rising action, build up the conflict, build up the conflict. Don't be shy, because as we build up the conflict, we get to understand our characters. Oh, okay. So when Lerato has an issue, she would rather kind of deflect it, make it look like it's not as big an issue as it is. So maybe this is what may upend her in the end. So Mushidi has this issue and that sort of thing. So in that way, you're now starting to get the reader to either root for the character or to identify this character as the one that they kind of love to hate or whatever it is. Or sometimes, and oftentimes I found this with a lot of my books, that women, when they read these books, they come to me and they talk about a character as if it's somebody that they know, or as if they're talking about themselves. So in building up the character, creating the tension, creating situations, and showing how the character reacts in that particular instance, you are forming a well-rounded person, a person with flaws, a person with huge, amazing attributes, admirable attributes that maybe you look up to as a person, or you relate to, or you wish you were that way. And in that way, you connect the character to the reader, which is quite important, because I feel like if you can't connect the character to the reader, then you don't give impetus to the reader to be invested in the book. And I think that's why oftentimes if you're reading a book where you're feeling that, this character, there's kind of a one-dimensional aspect to them, or the characters are not well-rounded, you quickly kind of toss it aside because you're not connecting, you're not finding that humanity in them, So those are some of the tricks of the trade, if you will. And then the climax, of course, we always building up to something. We're building up to some point. We want that high note that's going to just leave us awed, whether it's a positive kind of awe, or if it's shock, or if it just melts our hearts and makes us believe in something again, So the climax is quite important, because you can imagine if you're just, running through a straight path, there's no slopes, there's no, there's nothing, there are no ebbs and flows. So if it's like that, you're gonna lose interest at some point. So it's important to kind of have those waves, and then you get to that point, the point of deliverance, and you're like, aha, this is what we've been working towards the whole time. We've been building up to this point the whole time. And then of course, after your climax, then the story has to get to some kind of resolution. And the thing is, with my books, I actually found that with The Blessed Girl, the resolution, the denouement is very unexpected. Also with Red Ink, people have said, oh, is there going to be a sequel? Because shoo, you left us with like a punch, and we want to know if there's going to be a follow-up novel to that. And I think denouement is important, especially for somebody who's thinking of writing a serialized, like a series of novels, because when you think about your denouement or your ending, and you want to develop this character into a second book or a third book, it's important to think about the kind of note that you end on. Is it a note where you want the reader to say, oh, okay, at least they made it, or oh my goodness, shame, man, I can't believe that, things had to end so badly for this person. Or you want it to end with, oh, okay, this is interesting. I'd like to see this character again. I'd like to see what happens in the next phase of their lives. So yeah, those are just some tips on plotting methods. And then next, I'm going to actually take you through my personal writing process. And obviously, every writer has their own writing process, and it differs from person to person. It differs based on your motivation, your drive, and also, I think, practical things. Because let's face it, here in South Africa, a lot of us writers can't afford to be full-time writers, because it just doesn't pay enough to be able to sustain your livelihood. So sadly, most of us have to have other jobs and other things that we do while we pursue the love for our craft. And so this method works for me because as Ayanda said earlier on, I run my own business, so I do have a fair bit of control over my time. So what I normally start with, and I find this quite useful, is just like a little synopsis. It's for your eyes only, so it doesn't have to be like the most perfect English and the most perfect structure. But what it does is that it helps you kind of have the basis for your novel. Who's the main character? Who are the supporting characters? What is going to happen in this novel? What is the point? What is the plot? So that helps you to kind of carve out exactly, like in less than a page, exactly what the story is about. Okay. And then after that, maybe it's useful, or I find it useful, to list my main characters, to kind of have a character Bible. So with the blessed girl, who's Buntle? She's young, she's ambitious, she's gorgeous, and she knows it, and she's very cutthroat. She's willing to do anything to earn this luxurious lifestyle. If it means she's going to have affairs with married men, that's what she's going to do. If it means she's going to, whatever it is. So this is like kind of a cutthroat, ruthless person. But of course, I can't make her so ruthless that you're just going to hate her and just not be invested in her future. What are her weaknesses? What's her motivation in life? What's her backstory? Maybe there's something that happened in her life that has led her to be the way that she is. And so once you craft that character Bible and you yourself even start having empathy for this character that you thought was kind of like, this one is the one that people will love to hate. But as you craft the Bible, then you see that, of course, like anybody else, she's got her good points, she's got her flaws and her positive traits. And then you get going. You're good to go. You've got a plot, you've got an idea of what the story is about. You've got your main characters. Who's Buntle's mom? Buntle's brother, there's the blessers. What are they like? Who are they? What are their personalities, right? Then we get moving. You start writing your first draft at high speed. You can stop. Obviously, words are important. We are scribes, and we care about how we put words together. We want, a very vivid and strong language. We want to captivate the reader. It's not just about spewing out words on the page. There has to be some stylistic considerations. There has to be some beauty in the way that we write. So even if you're writing at maximum speed, of course, you're allowed to go and be pedantic and change and clean up and make sure that it sounds beautiful. It's engaging, right? But don't lose your pace and don't be intimidated. Sometimes you write at full speed, and this is what happens with a lot of writers who approach me. They'll say to me, I've been working on this novel for 7 years, but I can't get past a certain point, And I find that this is an affliction of mostly people who are very perfectionist. I'm not saying those of us who can do all draft method are not perfectionists, but I think that the Achilles heel of wanting to write that perfect novel, like the best one ever, is that you may never get around to completing your manuscript because you're kind of stuck in these little details. Sometimes you're stuck, it's writer's block, it's pure writer's block. It's not even about perfectionism. Maybe it's because when you were doing that synopsis, you didn't think through what is going to be the high point of the novel, what is going to be kind of the turning point that then steers the whole story towards the denouement. And that's why I think it's important to just kind of have those considerations that I outlined in the previous slide. So I think the main things that make us stuck is perfectionism, because we just feel, oh my gosh, this is nonsense. When you read it, you're like, oh Lord. And I can tell you, even the best writers, even the best of the best, read their work. Sometimes they read their debut work or their second novel, whatever it is, and they think, oh my goodness, how did I even have the guts to send this to a publisher? And it's normal, because as an artist, of course, you want to create something of beauty, something that can move you, not only your reader, but move you, make you feel proud that you put something out there like that into the world. And I think it's that vulnerability of us as writers that makes it so difficult to write. Because the minute you put something out there in the world, it no longer belongs to you. It's open to criticism. It's open to, adoration. It's open to, my books, and Dudu will attest to this with her own writing as well. The minute you take it out, there's going to be critical reviews. Some people will praise it, some people will slash it, and it's okay. And I think that's why, as a writer, just some of the softer skills that you need to have is a thick skin. You have to have a thick skin and have that conviction in your own work and love your own work enough to trust in it and trust in your process and to keep going, All right. And then some publishing pragmatics. The average word count for a novel is between 65,000 to 80,000 words. Okay. So if you use that as a ballpark, I think that'll help you know whether you've got yourself a novel. So if it's a bit too low, much lower than 65, if it's like 20,000 words, I don't know, you've got maybe like a short story at best. Only the brave venture into like the 100,000 and 150,000 word count. And it works with some writers, they're able to pull it off. Last year's Men Booker Prize winner, Benedict, I'm bad with authors' names, but her novel is called Girl, Woman, Child, and it's like a thick a tome of writing, but it's beautifully written. The characters are interesting, it's captivating, and you can tell that this is a writer who's in her element, so she can afford to take those kind of risks. So yes, you can go over that kind of baseline, but you really have to know what you're doing, and know the rules enough to know how and when to break them. And then breathe. Give yourself a chance to breathe and not be too self-critical, because that's just the affliction of every writer. Trust in your process, right? And then after you've done your first draft, it's a rough draft. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just about getting it done for now. There is time to go back and clean up and perfect. You summarize your novel to establish if there's a clear chain of events. Like, does it make sense that when A led to B, that's how we got to C and D? Because again, with this kind of process, you do get carried away. You do get lost in the magic of the words or your creativity. And of course, you are going to miss some things, which is fine. Like I said, allow yourself to mess up, because of course the beauty is you can go back and clean up again. Then break the plot, and then also you're going to read your manuscript a lot of times, which is important, because there's things that you miss as well when you're doing this all draft method. You may find that the story started in January, and then you're saying it's exactly 12 months later, June, and you describe the weather and whatever, and then you realize that no, if it's not 12 months later, it's 18 months later, and so on and so forth. And things like that can be irritating to some readers. Some readers pick up everything. They pick up, every little detail. So it's a very good idea to then also plot, once you've done your full draft, kind of do like a timeline. Okay, so my book is like 18 months. It's taking over an 18-month long period. So this is what happened in January. And then of course, which makes sense why this would have happened in June. And then now we are here 18 months later, and this is why this and that happens. So that's just a little trick to not trip yourself up over things like timing and so on. And of course, you have to use research. As a writer, you end up having to know so much about things that you never thought you need to know about. So I'm going to give you some crazy examples. Like, for instance, when I was writing Black Widow Society. So this is a secret society that plots to eliminate abusive husbands. They use a hitman to do that. So and they use very inventive ways to eliminate these men so that the crime is not traceable. It's kind of a vigilante group of women. And so, of course, I had to research things like, how do we get rid of a dead body without anybody finding out? And I'm sure if the police were to come and confiscate my laptop, they would think, oh my goodness, this woman, we've got ourselves a criminal. So as a writer, it is important to not be afraid of research. my current novel has a character who's a data scientist who works with algorithms and predictive analytics and things like that. The other one works in banking. She's the head of purchasing. The other one owns a gold mine. So all of those things, of course, I had to get into the world of gold mining and find out if a gold mine is successful, how many tons of gold does it produce? So you can't afford to be lazy, basically, if you really want your book to come alive and you want the characters to be realistic and believable, because there could be a cop reading your book and you've said that this is the criminal investigation process and you've completely messed it up. So also don't be afraid to go to, if you're going to talk about criminal investigation, don't be afraid to go to your friend who's a cop or your friend's friend who's a cop and say, look, if a crime like this is committed, what is the typical investigation process? Does it make sense if this happens and this happens and that happens? So I do that a lot as well. So yes, research is crucial, especially right now. I mean, readers now are so savvy, they're so sophisticated, and they will call you out on your mistakes and they will get irritated if you make silly mistakes. So you do need, the resources to do research. And fortunately, in this time that we live in, everything is just, at the tip of your fingertips. You just Google, you search, you have friends, you have people around you, you ask them questions, you irritate them and just ask them and ask until you satisfy yourself. And what I also do, and I've done a lot with this current novel as well, like I'm saying, there's some investigation. I've taken, my brother-in-law is a policeman, so I've taken a chapter and said, read this chapter, this is how I've laid it out. Does it make sense? Is this what would typically happen in a case like this, in an investigation like this? So don't be shy to send your work to people, just to double check facts, just to do some fact checking if you're not sure, especially if an area of your writing is kind of technical in a specific field that you're not too familiar with, and you just want to satisfy yourself that you are giving your readers the credit of really putting work into what you're saying. And then, of course, this is the most, sometimes the most arduous process in writing is the rewriting. So you may think writing your first draft is the most difficult part of writing, but the most difficult part of writing is writing the second draft, the third draft, and sometimes even the fourth draft. And if you are fortunate enough to have an editor, which you need, by the way, it's not even fortunate enough. If you are serious about writing, you need an editor. So if you're self-publishing, you're going to need to invest in a very good editor. If you're fortunate enough, or at least I feel fortunate to working with a publisher, a commercial publisher, they are going to assign an editor to look at your work. And that editor is not just looking at, how beautiful is your language. They're looking at, are there some, are you blind? Is there, are there some? Are you blindsided somewhere? Like, is there something that you missed because you're so involved in the process, involved in the plot, and you're so taken with your characters that you don't realize inconsistencies that you've made in your writing. So an editor in terms of manuscript writing is not just somebody who's looking at your grammar and your spelling. It's somebody who's looking at whether your plot makes sense, whether there's sufficient character development, whether there are no contradictions in your work. Maybe you said, earlier on you said, Lerato is left-handed, and, she finds it irritating that everything in the world is manufactured to right-handed people. And then 10 chapters later, you've forgotten that you said Lerato is left-handed, and then she picked up her bag with her right hand and smashed it onto Tabo's face, and you forget that this person's left-handed, so of course they would pick up the bag with the left hand. So little inconsistencies like that, because you as a writer may think you've got it figured, but remember, like I said, our readers are very smart. They know their stuff, they pick up things, and you don't want, those embarrassing little mishaps getting in the way of work that you put your heart and soul into. So yeah, that is the other important thing. So now that your book is done, you got your first, second, third draft, you've done it, you've polished it, you are not embarrassed now to share it with someone, you're ready to press send to a publishing firm. And so I'm talking about commercial publishing. I think Dudu, who's self-published, will give you some tips probably more on the self-publishing route. So one of the key practical steps that I take with all of my novels from the debut novel Red Ink up to now with Critical But Stable, which, by the way, I'm plugging it now, is coming out later this year. So please look out for it. So the first thing that I do is I always try and have a first reader. And I find that this is probably one of the most daunting steps in your writing process, because now your first reader is the first person literally who's going to now read the stuff that you've been working on your own, burning the midnight oil, thinking that it's lousy, thinking that it's brilliant, just oscillating between all of these emotions. So I find that it's important to have somebody that you trust. It could be a fellow writer. It could be even somebody who's close to you, just to say, look, I've written this thing, but I don't know if anyone other than myself will be interested in reading it, right? So this is a person that's casually, before you even take it to publishers, will probably even help you pick up small things like those inconsistencies that I talked about, because at this point, remember, there's no editor in the process, because if you're going the commercial route, they're going to take care of all of that for you. So you may want like a friend or somebody that you respect, or some professor that's good at writing or has written lots of books or whatever it is, to read it for you. Now your first reader has given you some feedback. They've pointed out some things. You've cleaned up where you can. You've written then you write your synopsis and the first 5 chapters. Usually, if it's a debut novel, the publisher's never heard of you before, they're going to ask you to send the first, the synopsis and the first 5 chapters of your book, so that they can just ascertain whether there's something in there. And this is very important when you're going the commercial publishing route. And it almost ended this writing career that I now have before it even began. And please pay attention to this. If you don't listen to anything else that I've said, if you've got a decent manuscript, expect rejection. So I'll tell you what my process was, or my journey was, with regards to that when I first wrote Red Ink. So I'd written this manuscript, I'd given it to my first reader, I'd given it to a lady who runs a writing school to have a look at it. And I was feeling good about it. My first reader raved about it. She said, "Oh, this is amazing. I've never read a South African story like this before. It's so amazing." And so now I'm getting buoyed by this sense of, achievement, and I'm thinking I'm onto something. Then I send it to a publisher. I send the synopsis. They say to me, "Okay, this sounds interesting. Send the next 5 chapters." I send my first chapters. Then silence. I hear nothing from the person who had contacted me. So now I'm getting nervous. Weeks are passing, months are now passing. It's like 2 months. I'm panicking. So I called the publishing house. The person who must have liked it enough to ask for my 5 chapters, had left the company. Now somebody else is reading it. They hate it. So I got a rejection letter. "Sorry, good luck. We are afraid this is not for us." I said to my first reader, who was a friend of mine, I said, they rejected me. I guess this is it. This is the end. I don't think maybe somebody that can write something that could be published, maybe I must just stick to my day job. And at least I gave it a try. Then, unbeknownst to me, the lady who ran the writing school took the manuscript that I had sent her and sent it to somebody else. And sent it to somebody else to have a look at. Sorry, my kids. And sent it to somebody else to look at, and they liked it. The company is Penn Macmillan Publishing, and they are still my publishing house to this day. And imagine if Amanda hadn't sent it off, I would have just decided that I'm not a writer, and I would have just given up, and I wouldn't have known that I would have 5 books 4 books published, for the 5th one on the way, and they've all done well, even internationally. And so, yeah, so do not be afraid of rejection. Embrace it. It's part of the process. Not every publishing company is looking for the kind of work that you are writing or the kind of manuscript that you've written, but there might be a publishing company that is. And so be bold enough to do that. And then obviously you need to look at your contract and look at publicity around. I'm actually going to stop because I hear somebody talking and I'm wondering if I've not. No, actually, that is my last slide. So yes, that in essence is my little masterclass on publishing. Is Ayanda there? Are there any questions? I don't know. Is Ayanda there?
Angela, we cannot hear you.
Oh, but you heard me before. We were hearing the other part.
If you are up.
Oh, okay. Tutu? Hello?
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
hi.
Yes.
Yes. So yes, that was the masterclass on plot and commercial publishing.
Okay, great stuff, Angela. It was so much. It was so much to take in, and I am trying to go through all the comments so that we can get as much of our viewers, our participants' questions answered, because that's the whole point. But thank you for that. Thank you for that presentation. I found it quite useful myself as an author, with a little bit of help from Dudu and our stack. But thank you very much for that presentation. I just want to acknowledge Zingisa Kuzana, Dimakato Mutawung, Sheliba Loyi, Andrea Dondolo, who says she's found this presentation quite informative and helpful, and also Ndandoku Nene. Thank you for joining us. I have a question, Sis Angela. I have a question from Mamo Tibedi Sehlabo, who wants to know more about online publishing. Is that something that you can answer?
No, I haven't delved into online publishing. All of my work, it is available as ebooks. But a lot of that, so the thing with commercial publishing is that once you work with a publishing house, a lot of the logistics of how to get your work out there is handled by the publishing house. So that's why I'm saying that the commercial publishing route is useful for somebody who that does not want to get involved in kind of the business aspects of it, or does not have the time or the resources to do that, but just needs to get their work out there. Obviously, there's a profit share model that's involved, and the difference between self-publishing and commercial publishing is mainly, or other than the fact that you get all the support and all of those resources and all of those kind of elements taken care of, is that you obviously have a profit share model with a publisher, whereas if you're self-published, I suppose all of the investment is done by you, and so obviously all of the profit then it goes to you.
Okay. I suppose we'll delve more into that when we start talking about self-publishing as well, Dudu. I also have another question from Kanyisile Mjobile Uti. As a young woman who hasn't grown up with my native language or tongue, and having attended Model C schools, I find that language can be a barrier towards telling a story. How do you still find your authentic voice despite these barriers? What are the things that I can pay attention to?
Okay, language is important, and I'm glad that PenSelb is actually the organization that is hosting this, because Language, when you think about language and you want to write and you actually realize that writing involves so much output from you in terms of putting words together, then you will have to have that conversation with yourself as an author, which is basically what language can I best or am I able to best express myself in? And for me, English is the language that I easily express myself in because I've started from I think around grade I don't know what the grades are grade 4 or 5 or whatever it is. I started studying at an English medium school, and so if she's been at Model C schools, meaning that maybe her first language in terms of learning and expressing herself would probably be English. Unfortunately, if that's the language that she best expresses herself in, then I think that is the language she would probably have to use in writing whatever it is that she wants to work on. I think this is why this conversation about language and about which language should be used as a medium of instruction is important, because even if I express myself in English, and I write in English and all of that, obviously at home I speak Xhosa at home. My parents speak Xhosa. My friends speak Sotho, Tswana. I think I speak almost all of the South African languages. So there's no language that I can say I am 100% proficient in, and I'm 100% confident in. And so that is why it's so important to be very pedantic about your work once you've done the first and second draft, to clean up, to look at the way that you phrased it, to read a lot, read as much as you can, because it's through reading that you have that firmer grasp on expression, So whether you're writing in Xhosa or Zulu or whatever it is, read Xhosa books, read Zulu books, read English books, so that you fall in love with just the artistry of putting words together.
I have a question for you, and it's a follow-up from this question. Would you consider having your books translated into other languages? And would you consider having them translated into other languages? But the transitioning from the style of writing and then having it in an indigenous language, would that be affected? Does it affect the style? Does it affect the flow? What does one have to look out for if you're wanting to translate? So, for instance, if you're saying, I'm not necessarily strong in my mother tongue, but I have this beautiful story that I want to tell. I'm going to write it in English, but ngifuna ukuyitranslate. Pluses, pros, cons?
I've been approached, once or twice for translations, and I've always been excited when there's that opportunity. But like I'm saying, because unfortunately my work life is so involved, there's so many things I do during the day that I can't really follow up with those kind of things. It's things that I normally then, I engage with the person and then I take it through to the publisher to deal with. But I think I have worked, I know writers who've translated their works, and it's a tricky, it's quite tricky, because, for instance, the one writer, Dion Meyer, one of the biggest crime writers here in South Africa, he's Afrikaans Afrikaans speaking, and so he writes a lot of his books in Afrikaans, and then they get and then he's got this translator that he works with who translates to English, and his language, the way he expresses himself is he can get very poetic and all of that. And I always asked him, like, don't you worry that some of it literally gets lost in translation? And I suppose it's useful for him in his particular case, which would probably be a case with a lot of people who write in our in a mother tongue language like Xhosa or Sotho. I suppose the advantage would be that you will have some kind of grasp of English, even if English is not like your mother tongue. So you'll be able to call out translations that that don't commit to the integrity of your work. And this is the thing about any kind of translation. One of the other examples I can make with regards to translation, although it's not about language, it's translating from novel to screenwriting. So I'm not a screenwriter, and I think about almost all of my books have been signed up for screen adaptations, and it's only and to be honest, very few of the screenplay attempts have pleased me, have made me happy, because, like I'm saying, it's about seeing that the translator, whether they're translating in a language or translating to a different medium, or like a different channel. It's you, as a writer, you want to see that commitment to the integrity of your work. You don't want somebody who now wants to write a new Blessed Girl or a new Red Ink or a new whatever.
Yes.
And I think that would be the concern even with translation. So I guess that's probably one of the advantages of living in a country like South Africa, and why it's important to actually be interested in other languages. It's important. You can't be South African and just know one language, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's diligent for any South African to at least know a couple of the languages, and I suppose in this case that's where that kind of knowledge would come in handy.
Great stuff. I have one more question for you. This is from Puseletso Molefi, who says, in fact, this is the first statement is very interesting, and I'd like your input, and then there's a question follow-up. But the statement says that writing is not the hard part. It's not that hard. What's your take on that? Dudu's laughing. I get
no, but is
Dudu's laughing. I don't know. This is how it starts. Puseletso Molefi says, writing is not that hard, right? And then goes on to says, but publishing is a challenge when you don't have the money. So can you guys advise us on how do we get access to credible publishing companies, and how does one get access to funding? I just want us to maybe just talk a little bit about that first part. Yeah, writing is not that hard. Guys.
No. No, to be honest, writing is hard, guys. I think any writer who loves their craft knows that writing is hard. Writing is hard because, you know, you're not writing, presumably, unless you're just doing free flow poetry, like I said, like with the starting out with an idea. If you're just doing free flow poetry and you don't care if you're the only person who's going to fall in love with what you've written, then writing is not hard because it's just for you. You're just expressing yourself. You don't care if Dudu reads it and hates it. You don't care if Ayanda reads it and hates it. It's for you. Then it's not hard. Of course, you just do it. It's for you. Who cares, you know? But writing is hard because it's in the, if you put it out there, it's in the eye of the beholder. And if you're just gonna write whatever you like to write and you think it's great, and because you think it's great, everybody must just appreciate that it's great and it's amazing. Then, you know, then you can say writing is not hard. Writing is hard. It's hard because you've got to keep the reader interested. You've got to keep them wanting to read more of your work. And maybe, and as long as you, I think it's a dangerous thing to think that writing is hard, because even people who've won awards and have written 100 books think writing is hard. So writing is hard. It's very hard.
I have to agree with you. I get quite a number of manuscripts sent through. Dudu, I'm sure you it's the same for you. I'm sure it's the same for you, Angela. And people are ready to publish, you know, like they send it and they are ready to publish.
Yeah.
And it's not to minimize anybody's dreams or hard work, but I think people need to understand that not everybody is a writer. It does take a special kind of skill and talent, just like not everybody is an actor. It takes a special kind of skill and talent, and it's a gift. Writing is a gift, and I think we undermine and underestimate the divinity of it, the divine aspect of it, that writing actually is a gift. And so I'm glad that we've addressed that. He goes on to ask that the challenges in the publishing, and then when you don't have money. But I want to go into that when we're having the discussion a little bit later on, because I want to now introduce uDudu ukuthi aqale naye ngepresentation yakhe. I just have a few things engifuna ukuzikhuluma with my panelists. Please, can you, if you're not presenting, switch off your mic. Also, I'm still having background noise coming through, so please, 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 I need you to be wary of that. And then for our viewers, a lot of you are asking about the presentation. The presentation is Obi Corner. There is a download file, a link on this webinar, so you can download the presentation, Angela, but also this is going to be recorded and it is going to be available. And also please do visit the PanSelb website page for more information. And if you are on Twitter, if you are on Facebook, please hashtag us. It is hashtag women in writing and hashtag PanSelb. Thank you for that, Angela. That presentation was very informative. I take away a lot from it, and I think everybody that's, I mean, from the comments, there's a lot coming through in terms of just how informative it's been and how helpful it has been. One of the things that you say in your presentations, don't be intimidated, and this is how I want to introduce uDudu, because Dudu is kind of like I kind of want to call you to do the bulldozer, because like you just kind of just bulldoze the industry. Like you are just like, I'm not going to stick to any of your rules. I am just going to do me. This is how I write, right? And let me tell you, what you did for me was give me the liberty to be able to express and articulate myself the way I wanted to in my writing. Because I think for a long time, sitshelwe ukuthi the proper ways of writing, or the intellectual way of writing, is the Shakespearean way of writing. It's the Shakespearean English way of writing, and that is proper writing. And we express ourselves differently as an African people. And so I think really what you did was a game changer for the industry. And I'm sure you and some other African authors, but I say you specifically because I have quite an intimate relationship with your books, and so you know when Sis Angela was talking about not being intimidated, I was reminded of you and just how you broke the rules when it came to literature, broke every rule that's ever been written for us, that we couldn't write it this way, that it had to flow in this way, that it had to, and like I say, I mean, I have a chapter called Straight in my book, and whoever thought you can have a heading called Straight, and of course, if you are from the township, you would understand which straight is the main chick, and that is what it means. But it was for anybody who deems literature to be, or in the westernized standards, or who sees literature in the Shakespearean lens. To have that on a book would be so improper. It's like, what is this, but that's how I want to introduce you. Like, you really just changed the game, broke the rules, and so for all of you who are listening and are tuning in, I want to introduce Dudu Busani Dube. Dudu is a South African fiction author and journalist by profession. She made her mark with the 3 books, Shomu, The Wife, Zandile, The Resolute, Naledi, His Love, which appeal to the average female Black reader. She's also written her 4th book, Zulu Wedding, which is a narrative based on a film. While still working as a journalist and covering a number of high-profile court cases, Dudu went on a journey of self-publishing her series of fiction books, Shomu, the series. She is viewed as a writer for the everyday woman, and her series have gained a huge following. She was also a contributor to anthologies Black Text, Burden or Ubuntu. Yeah, Burden or Ubuntu, interesting, published by Jonathan Paul in 2019, and the Lockdown Collection published by Melinda Ferguson Books in 2020. Dudu, I want to welcome you, and I want to give you an opportunity to take us through your presentation on Indigenous language and literature and self-publishing.
Okay. Hi, and hello everyone. I'm not going to put anything on the screen. Apparently I can't, because it kind of disrupts the sign language interpreter. But yeah, I can email whatever I have to whoever wants it. So today, I don't need to introduce myself, and I said everything. And yeah, the praise was great. Maybe it's exaggerated. I don't know, but it was great. I loved it. So I'm gonna talk about just for I think I'm gonna talk more about self-publishing, then I'm gonna spend more time in self-publishing. But I'm going to speak about my first point of discussion is writing in our languages, in African languages, in literature. I'm going to start by just describing the state of that in South Africa. And the fact of the matter is that it's bad. We do not have literature that is written in our languages. So and it's understandable because it's the business aspects of it that is making it not doable for a lot of people. Writers in South Africa are not writing in our languages for leisure, for just the entertainment of reading, and that is because, first of all, it's limiting. For me, if I'd written my books in isiZulu, they would have been limited to people in KwaZulu-Natal or people from the Guni tribes, people who speak almost like the Xhosa people, the Swati people, and the Bele people, which would not have made business sense for me. It would have meant I can only sell my books to people who understand the language that I was writing in. So that is one of the main reasons behind people in South Africa, especially people who write fiction or non-fiction books that are just commercial. That is one of the problems that lead to them not wanting to write in languages that are ours, because you cannot sell the book to somebody in Limpopo or somebody in the Northwest, and in any form of arts, just crossing over and having an audience that is mixed, and whether it is in terms of tribes in South Africa or race or people living outside the country. It just makes business sense to write in English. I know you touched on this with Angela when she was talking about she was answering a question, and she did explain it. She did explain it very well that for a lot of people, English is just the preferred language because it's the language that most people understand, whether it is in writing or in business. There is also just the historical part of it, that for the longest time, our languages were kind of censored in South Africa, especially in when it comes to publishing. There are a lot of Afrikaans people could easily publish whatever they wanted. I mean, the majority of publishing companies were in Afrikaans and English, so they could. I mean, and that their reading culture has remained great because it comes from a long time ago. They were always able to publish books. They were always able to write just for leisure and pleasure in their languages. And the children that are here now had grown with it. But for us, the most you could find in Zulu, I'm going to talk about Zulu because it's my language, with the school books, the books that you read in schools, those were the ones that are prescribed for the curriculum. Those were the books you could find. There were just a few there that were written here and there, and they were published by the same a big company, your Shutter and Shooters. In fact, most of them are just translated into our languages. There's also that issue of translation where okay, I understand. Okay, there is that issue with translation where a lot of people who have written books in English and they have been translated into our languages, and a lot of writers have had that problem where they're not happy with the translation, and it does take away just the personality of the writer. If somebody is taking what you've written word for word and putting it in another language, even if it is your language, it kind of loses your presence and your voice, and it just it becomes really dry. That has been one of the many reasons why a lot of writers don't want their books translated into any language, especially if it's from English to their language. So that has, I remember I had a conversation, we were just sitting around and talking with Fred Kumalo this other time. His book about the assessment, he was talking about how it's going to be translated into isiZulu, and he said he thinks that the best thing is for him to start writing it again from the beginning, to start writing it in Zulu instead of somebody taking what he's written and turning English words into Zulu words. And I'm not sure how far he is with that one, but I think, yeah, he's just done writing just the Zulu version of it with his voice still there. But just wanna, there's not a lot of publishing companies that are going to take your Zulu or Setswana or Sepedi book to publish. Most of these publishers that are willing to do this are the ones that are actually more focused in academic content. So one of them, it was launched in 2017. It's called Kwasukela Books. I think at this time it's the youngest and it's the most I think it's the most active in the space right now. I know they've published Fred as well in his book about Manze Kofi. So those are some of the people that you could go to, and there's still also your Shatta and Shooter. They've been around since 1930. I'm not sure what they if they take your novels that are written in isiZulu and all of that. So but also there's that pressure to meet the standards of about GBZ Duli, about IS Kupega and your kids, people that are very, very good with language writing. And I mean, to be honest, we don't speak the same way we used to a long time ago. So this other time we made a joke about how Soweto people don't know a single language, how they can speak 8 languages and still don't know a single language because they don't speak any language properly. They and it wasn't taken very well. So I'm going to talk about just the importance of it, though. I think I've said a lot of negative things about why people just don't, why we don't have any indigenous language content in the space. But while there are all those problems around it, and we are still just trying to navigate around this space, we cannot write in our language just because we just need to preserve. It's language is part of the identity, and the only way we are going to be able to do that is if we get assistance that we need for us to write in our language and still be able to make money of it and still be able to to have it as a business and be able to market it. So Pansel, this one is for you. You need to come in and assist us. And also just the fact that we are losing our language in and it has nothing to do with us not speaking to our children. It's about what they're exposed to most of the time. TV, radio, what they are taught at school. The fact that we have communities that are very mixed. Your neighbor could be Venda, and your friend opposite could be Tonga, and the girl from 2 streets away is white. So in that mixture, children tend to, when they are together, they find the language of
Dudu. Apologies, it looks like we've lost Dudu. I'm going to ask the technical team to work on that. Keep those questions coming. Thank you for asking them, but I do want to ask them when everybody is on board. It doesn't make sense to ask them now, but I've got them here, and I'm definitely going to be going through them. I think we've lost Dudu, and Dudu is probably going to try and join us again. On whilst we're sorting that out, maybe let me just go through some of your comments. Togozani says, writing is fun. It becomes hard when your ideas aren't flowing. Such an insightful conversations. Bridget Crone says, bollocks, writing is hard. You sweat through your eyeballs. True, very true. Lungi Nyamana, I'll attend to your question. I can see it. Zilungile Madigi, I'll also attend to your question a little bit later on. I think once I have the full panel back, I think it will be easier to go through the questions. This is an interesting comment again from Bridget Crone, who says, I've just had a children's novel published in the US and in England. It's now available in South Africa through Penn Macmillan, but I sent it out to South African publishers first and waited 7 months before I got a response. So be prepared for it to take quite a long time. Let's talk about that. Why should it take a long time? What is the red tape? Can we break through the red tape? What is this red tape really all about? If it was good enough to be published in England and in the US, why couldn't we publish it here in South Africa when it was sent here first? For those of you who are struggling to log on, do yourselves a favor, reboot. So get out of the link and click on the link again, and that might help you if you are struggling to log on, if you're struggling with your network. We're still waiting for Dudu to come back. Emma Duba is saying there is a lot of written stuff in the form of books, poems with rich messages, I think is what she meant. Sorry about that. Okay, again, Sybil Otterstrom saying very informative. Anything on Kindle? I think that's a question, so we'll do that a little bit later on. This is all regarding Angela's presentation earlier on. Dudu's back. Dudu's back.
Yeah,
that helps me.
Yeah, load shedding happened.
Sorry. Welcome to South Africa.
So, yeah, it just went boop, gone. So now I'm just gonna try to do it with my phone. So I don't even yeah, that just happened. So I was talking about where was I? I was talking about just the importance of us writing in our languages, and in fact it's not just about writing, it's about all the content that we artists produce, whether it is film, whether it is music, and books that we write. Just the importance of delivering our stories in our own languages. So I was talking about how much kids just automatically need to communicate in the language that is English, which is just a default, medium of communication, because everybody understands it. So, and then it just leads to a point where we either lose our languages or we don't know how to speak them properly. And how it is easy sometimes for people to just parents or elders to just speak to their children in English, because that is also how they communicate when they are outside the home and they're working. It's just one of the things that they are contributing to us sort of losing their languages. So I dress on the hands of organizations like Pencil to try and preserve that. There's also not a lot of children's books that are written in our languages, which is one of the biggest problems. So it also seems like, I know I spoke about this, but then I forgot to mention that it looks like when writers decide to write in any South African language, in any indigenous language, the goal is to get into. It's usually just to get into the curriculum, the school curriculum, which is where you can make money if you write in South African language, or I'm not going to call them black languages. So it seems that is the reason behind any writing in a language that is South African, rather than aiming to be a bestseller, aiming to be in the the top 10 exclusive books with the rest of the books that are written in English and Afrikaans. But also that has a lot to do with the limitations that are here. I'm going to, I did say I was going to talk about this a little bit because also you guys had covered it with Angela when she was answering a question. And then self-publishing. I'm going to move to that now. And I'm going to say, I feel like I've become like a poster girl for self-publishing. It seems like every time somebody wants to talk about self-publishing or wants to know something about it, I just I pop in everywhere. So I'm going to start by talking about just the the process of it and what it entails, because I think that people really think it's one of the easiest things to do, which is not. I'm sure you know, and which that is totally untrue. Eh? So I always tell people that do not self-publish because nobody wanted your book, because no publisher wanted to publish your book. That should not be the reason behind you going into self-publishing, because then it's for the wrong reasons and you are going to just not get it. You're not going to understand it. You can't publish because you think you are good when everybody thinks you are not. So rather take what they say and whatever feedback they give you when they tell you they do not like your book. Just take that, take it into consideration, fix where you can fix, but also it shouldn't be because they don't think that people are going to like your work. That is something that you should test yourself. By I put my book or the first chapters of my book on WordPress. I just got the feedback from people, and they liked it. I don't think any publisher would have loved it though. So let's just talk about just the technicalities of it. So you've decided why you want to self-publish. You have your reasons. Why? Because you want to keep your voice, because you have you think your book is good. People have told you that your book is good. Maybe somebody has tried to publish you and you said, no, I'd rather do it myself. The first thing you need to think about is, what is a book? What is a proper book? What is a professional looking book? What does it look like? Take a book, look at it, and decide which of the books that you have you want yours to look like. So what goes into putting a book together? First of all, before you even think about publishing or calling someone or asking somebody for help, have a book that is written and finished. Written, finished, and read by you. And then you can start talking to people about your book. But you don't go to someone and say, I want to write a book. What do I do? Can you help me write a book? Nobody's going to do that. Nobody wants to do that. And I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of writers. We don't read all the things people send us to read for them. Like if you get like 5-10 emails in a week of people wanting to be published, and they expect you to read their whole book and give them feedback. No. Sometimes, it happens if you're lucky, but also, it's time. Unless you are paying somebody to do that. But also it's a matter of time. It's what we do for. It's in a line of work, so it's not something that you're going to do for everyone. So once you have a book, you need to know you need to know about copyright. You need to know that you need to get an ISBN number. You need to know who you're going to put in your credits. You need to know how to structure a do all your chapter starts on the first page? Do they all start on an even or an odd number page? All of that, just for your book to look good. You have to get, and this one has a lot to do with the cost. How much money do you have? If you want to put a book together, how do you have money? Because it costs, and it costs a lot of money, So just the for you to be able to send your manuscript to an editor, because then that's the first step. You send it to an editor. How long is your book? They're going to charge you per word or per page. Are you going to be able to pay a good editor to edit your book? When the book is edited, are you going to be able to pay a typesetter, a designer? Are you going to be able to pay a cover designer? When it comes to, do you know the different types of papers that are used for printing? Do you know the difference between a glossy cover and a cover that is
matte?
Matte? Yeah. Do you know the difference? Do you know how will you know if your cover resonates with the content of the book? It can't just be a pretty cover. It has to be a cover that tells a story about the book as well. So once you've calculated those costs, you need to know how much you're going to spend, and you need to have that money, because like Angela said, it's not when you send in a manuscript to a publisher, all you have to do is send them a manuscript. After that, you don't have to do anything, nothing at all. They'll design your cover, they will get you an editor, they do all of that stuff for you. They will even market the book. They will even get it into libraries and all those places. So have the money. It doesn't. I don't. You can go for cheaper options, but make sure there is money to do all of this stuff. That is
when we
just the
say
cost.
money to do, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you in, but when we say money, on an average, what are you talking for somebody who's never done this and who, on an average, what are we talking?
Look, we're actually talking a lot of money. And we haven't gotten into printing, which is where you also spend a lot of money. But I mean, an editor will also, depending on how long your book is, an editor will charge you maybe, let's say, 250 per word. And if your book is 80,000 words, which is an average book size, my math is bad.
Sorry to do. I just want to say, can we not speak in number of words? I think it's easier when we speak in pages, number of pages. So 80,000 words would be around about how many pages?
I don't know. No, it also depends on the typesetting of your book, and it also depends on the font and that determines the number of pages. So let's say maybe 200 pages, depending on how big or how small your font is.
Average books would be about 200, 220, 230 pages.
Yeah, also depending on the size of the book itself. So it's that I can't calculate how much there's going to be. My math is really bad, but you do pay a lot for an editor unless you have a book that is 50 pages. And then a graphic designer will charge for a cover, will charge you something like I don't know. I think my last one was about how much? I think it was about 2,000 rand for the person who is the same person who's designed all my covers. So I don't know if he's charging me less or if that's his actual price. So you have all of those things, and also you have to think about the printing, which is determined by also how big your book is, which paper are you using, and nobody wants to read a book that is printed in white paper, and that is the cheapest paper, and that is the mistake that a lot of self-published writers make. And I know it has a lot to do with the funds that it costs less to print in white paper, and nobody wants to read that. The moment somebody picks up your book and they see that you've printed in white paper, it screams unprofessional, it screams cheap. It doesn't inspire anyone to pick it up and read it, especially if it's a fictional book, a novel. Nobody wants to read it, so you end up stuck with a lot of copies that nobody's going to want to buy. And also, yes, the cover also determines how much you pay for the printing. And the strange thing about it, which I didn't know until I had to print, was that the more books you print, the less you pay per book printed, which
Hayi
is
mantutu besidlala istokfela sikhule sidlala istokfela mos like
yeah, I didn't know that. I
the
didn't know
power of
that.
numbers.
So yeah, so my first print was very small, until I figured things out as I went. But I didn't know that. And also it's I mean that it's less doesn't mean that you don't pay. You still have to pay. So you're not going to print like 50,000 books, which you're not sure if you're going to sell, just because you want to print per book for 5 rand. So that's another thing that is a problem. And it's better when traditional publishers are doing it, because they have a wide space of distribution. And another thing that you should consider before you decide to self-publish is, how are you going to get your book in a bookstore? And that is the biggest hurdle for a lot of self-published writers, because a bookstore is not going to just take your book. They will not. You need to, unless they have relationships with traditional publishing companies. So if you're published with those, your book is automatically going into every bookstore in South Africa. But you can't just walk in to bargain books or exclusive books and say, "Hi, my name is Dudu. I tried that. My name is Dudu. I have a book. Can you please sell it?" They're not going to do that. I remember when I printed Klomu the first time, I did go to a store and said, "These are my books. Can you sell them?" And they said, like, "Who are you?" No, we're not going to sell them. And it took a year before that same bookstore had my books on their shelves. So this is a problem with a lot of and there are great books that are there that are self-published, but people just they can't get them into stores. And that is something that, before you self-publish, have a plan. Just get as much information about how you are going to do that. Before you even start printing. And these are all the things that you do for yourself. This is your job every day. This is what you do. And there's marketing, which is also another big problem. People just don't know how to market a book. First of all, how do you organize a book launch? Where? Who is going to come? What are you going to be able to get at least some media to come and cover your book launch, or talk about, or write about your book, or even review your book? How are you going to do that? Do you know enough people to convince to do this for you? So marketing is another thing that you should have a plan. I know there are people who write with marketing plans and strategies. I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. So you should have a plan on how you're going to market your book. How is it going to get exposure in anyway. So a lot of us, and I mean me and some of self-published writers in the country have been successful we've used social media a lot, because and we can all agree that, and I come from mainstream media, from working there, that a Facebook post can reach more people than a newspaper article in a daily newspaper. So we have used social media a lot. It's not guaranteed. It can be risky sometimes. And it's also, it opens you up to people have access to you, and sometimes you just don't want to be communicating and just being out there about everything that you're doing about your life. So, but also you have to do it because you have to communicate with people who consume what you do. So social media has been a savior for a lot of us, but also just public spaces, which is where we've been able to sell our books before we got into bookstores. Just public gatherings, the pop-up sales, the markets. There's also the online stores, which are a great tool to use, but also they can be a problem sometimes because you wake up one morning and they're gone. And they're gone with your book and they're gone with your money. Yeah. So that has been just some of the things, the risks that we have to take. And we've had people run away with our monies, even physical bookstores that have not paid us. So that is just the things that you should consider before you even think about self-publishing. I'm not trying to scare anyone away, but these are things that you should consider. But then there's also the good parts. The best part about self-publishing is that, and that is if you do it for the right reasons, and if you have enough information, and you're willing to work hard enough to make it a success and protect your brand and make your work look professional, and you have the tools to make it work. But the thing about self-publishing as well, which is what has brought a lot of change in the reading culture in South Africa over the past 5 years or so. It's that people have been able to use their voices as they are, And when you write a book and you decide, if you self-publish, you decide how you want it to go out. It's you don't sit with somebody who's been in the publishing industry for 60 years before you were born and have them tell you that no, but this is not how we write. This is not literature. This is not acceptable. It's not because that happens.
You're not
a lot.
censored.
Yeah, it's not. So you are able to put it out there the way you want it to be heard, and I think that has contributed a lot into in how the self-publishing has bloomed, and how all these writers have come and they've taken over and they've been bestsellers. So there's that, but there's also the part about just intellectual property as a whole, and you'll know because you're in the industry of intellectual property. Just the fact that, I mean, at some point we creative people are gonna have to be at a place where our talent is our cash cow. Do you get what I'm saying? Where my work I create. So I'm not, I don't want to be that person who has created something and has made 5 people around me very, very rich, and I'm just there. You become something like a how am I going to put it? It's like you are here, you are this money cow, and there's all these people around you who just make money out of you. So it's important for us to want to own our work, to want to decide how we want it to be used. We need to be sitting in boardrooms and negotiating how much this big company is going to pay me for using even just a chapter of my book to infuse into a story they're doing for TV. And we need to also learn to trademark and to copyright and to just the legalities of that come with owning intellectual property. So so that's another thing, just the ownership of your work, of what you create. Even if it takes me 2 minutes to create something that becomes big, it's mine. I created it in those 2 minutes, and it's my mind. So I must decide what I do with it and how much I get paid for it. There is also, I'm sorry, this thing, yeah. Okay, so in self-publishing, there's the collaborations that which I've found in my space of writing, that I've been able to do collaborations with a lot of people, even people who are not in the writing industry, just for so you have the freedom to do that, to choose who you want to work with, and what you can give them, and what they can give you, and it's just that freedom, man. There's that freedom. Look, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. For the first 2 years of my self-publishing journey, it was crazy. I was making money and investing it back into the business. So I was selling a lot of books, but I didn't have a lot of money because I was using that same money to put back into the business. And then I'm now at a space where I'm very comfortable, where my books sell themselves, and I'm fine. I'm doing other things. So just the freedom of you being able to to take it wherever you want to take it, and just saying, okay, this is mine. I'll do with it whatever I want to do. Have I been talking for too long? Okay.
No, but I think you can start wrapping it up, because I want to start.
Yeah.
I want to bring Mam Dolly. So yeah, I'll give you just a few more minutes to wrap up.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to just my parting point. And you said this earlier, that not everybody can write. Not everybody is a writer. But if you feel like you have it in you, it's okay if you don't succeed the first time. Because that is a problem with a lot of people. It doesn't, it flops. The first book flops, and they think, okay, I'm dropping it. I'm not doing it anymore. But it's okay to, some of the best selling books in the world. I know one that was rejected 21 times by publishers, and this was the 22nd publisher who took it, and it became the biggest biggest book in the world. So that the problem is that people want things to happen now, and they want them to happen fast, and it's always a quick thing. But it's always great to go back and polish your craft and improve. Just keep improving and improving and improving. And then when you self-publish, you do it for the right reasons, and because you have all the information that is there and all the knowledge that is there. Yeah, I think
You're gonna wrap it up there. Do. Yeah. Thank you so much. So for those of you that don't know, when I wrote my book, Unbecoming to Become, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Ngoba and it wasn't an idea, Unbecoming for me was a divine project, and one that I needed to do for such a time as this. And so, because ngangazi ukuthi kwenziwa njani, I really largely dependent on yourself and Nobuntu Webster to assist me with how do I navigate the publishing sector. And there's been a lot of learning. So for those of you who didn't know, Dudu was a part of that journey of Unbecoming, actually hitting the shelves and getting out there, because you and I spoke a lot, and I want to bring Dr. Dolly Davana now, because I want to answer as many questions as possible. And I want to ask the questions when all the panelists are here. And so I want to bring back Angela I don't know if Angela is able to come back to join the panel. And then I'm going to bring Mam Dolly. I call her Mam Dolly, but her proper title is Dr. Dolly Dlavane. Dr. Dlavane is a PenSouth board member and serves as a chairperson for the core mandate committee of the board. She's a researcher in the field of education with the main focus of reading literacy and Setswana literature. Mam Dolly, welcome. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you are able to connect with us. But welcome. I'm wanting to bring you into the conversation now because I would like all panelists to share in answering the questions, because I think that's most important. This is not for us. This is for the public. So if we can get through as many of the questions as we can, it would really be great. And Dudu, as you're talking, I'm thinking of a child who's in the rural areas, ingane esemakhaya, ingane eselokishini, who has great stories to tell. And we know these children, lezi ngane lezi okwakuthi makudlalwa kube izona ubone zonke ingane ziyingungile le ngane iyakhuluma iyayivuza telling stories but it's all in their head. So all in their head, they're all in their imagination. And there were children like that used to fascinate us. But because sasingafundisiwe, sasingazi ukuthi actually those were storytellers, and those people needed to be in this industry, and this is how we could harness the talents, and this is how we could channel them and help them to get into this publishing industry. So for me, as you're talking, I'm thinking of those children in rural areas, in the townships, who don't have access to this kind of information, who are gifted in storytelling. What do we do about them, and what do we say about them? Dr. Dolly, I'm still waiting for you to come and join the conversation, because I think this is an important question for PenSouth as well, to answer, to say, how do we reach our rural communities with this kind of information, so that we can unearth. I mean, one of the mandates is to unearth in our townships. So I don't know if any of you have anything to add to that.
Okay. I just want to say about that, where the issue about the children in the rural areas. I think the problem starts, and this is not just the rural areas. This is just our generation of Black young people. I think it's better with my 2000 my born freeze. Just what we do, just creativity not being considered a job or a career that you can go into. You had to be a lawyer, a doctor, or in our time it was the engineers and the IT specialists,
teachers and nurses.
So mothers and teachers and nurses. So it starts with just a child who has that type of gift, that imagination, just not understanding that it's something that they could do for the rest of their lives and make a living out of. So they become, the kids you're talking about, abo manga, they become like the clowns of the clowns of the group. And so it becomes just they comic relief. They're just entertainers who do it because it makes everybody like them. So I think once you start educating children about gifts, about talent, about talent is not a hobby. It's something that you have. So how do you utilize it? How does it become your bread and butter? And also the parents they're not very welcoming when it comes to children that are different. They're not, you just become the weird one, and you are the strange kid, and nobody understands your mind and how it works. But you're still expected, weird as you are, you're still expected to go to school and study maths and be a doctor and come back and pay your black tax in peace. So I think that's where the problem is. They just start introducing arts in school, proper arts. Proper cater for creative children, and not throw them in a maths class for them to be lost. And don't understand what's going on. Okay.
Yes, no, for sure. I think the parenting one is an important one. We need to educate abazali, especially, because it really is up to us to be the ones that nurture and harness that talent. But if you're not doing it for the child at a young age, then you've already misaligned them to their destiny, or misaligned them with destiny. Sorry. Dr. Dolly, are you able to hear us at least? Are you able to speak to us? Okay. I'm going to take a few questions, guys. There were questions that came in earlier. Can one, this is from Andrea Dondolo, a sister in the arts as well. Can one reach out for mentoring, because many books never see the light of day due to lack of mentoring? And Dudu, I want to bring you in, maybe not bring you in because you spoke about collaborations, and I had a point around the power of collaborations. Maybe Angela, let me ask you, mentoring. How do you feel about mentoring? Because I can tell you how I feel about mentoring, and it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's a lot because you have 20 requests a week for people wanting to be mentored. It's not possible. It really is impossible. So how do we put in place proper structures to be able to mentor people through the hurdles, so their books can see the light of day?
Yeah, I think thanks for just highlighting the reality of just the utter lack of pragmatism in being able to, like, if I were to open myself up, or do it to open myself up like that, there'll be just a deluge of requests, and there's no way you're going to be able to accommodate all of those requests. And so I think the practical thing is workshops like this one. I think that's why I tried to actually put something together so that, people start thinking more practically about writing, that it's not just about flinging a whole lot of ideas onto the page and hoping it sticks, that there is some technicality to it, and there is, like any other thing, there is some technicality to it. There is a beginning, a middle, and an ending of some sort. So I think the most practical thing is to look out, especially now there's these amazing webinars that are happening like this one. There's lots of workshopping going around. You attend writers' festivals. If you're a budding writer, attend festivals, attend events that are about imparting knowledge around it. I think that is the most practical thing you can do for yourself, because if you go the route of trying to approach a Dudu and Angela or an Ayanda, it's just, it's not going to end well.
That's very true. I've got another question here. I think it's one that's been answered, but I don't know if anybody would still like to add. I was wondering if we can be assisted with the list of commercial publishers that are willing to work with amateur writers. This is from Zilungile Madiki. Speaking of amateur writers, publishers that are willing to work with amateur writers. I think this is part of the problem, Dudu, that you're talking about, that so many of these big companies generally, just if you're a nobody, not to say nobody is nobody,
no,
but if you're a nobody, if you're a nobody, they're like, I will.
No,
okay. you will, Angela, you will connect just now. But I think you made such an important point when you were talking about how, when you started, you were writing on the blogs. You were doing the press word. You said it was, you were doing press word, and in WordPress, and in light of social media now and what social media is able to do for us, I think there's a lot more that people can do to get their work out there, to start kind of positioning themselves and their writing skill, or their writing style, or just who they are as a writer. I think there's a lot that people can in terms of starting to position themselves without necessarily going to knock on doors of the Penn Macmillans and so forth. So that's just my 2 cents worth. But Angela seems to be burning with passion, with it, like she has an answer. Like, so please, ngicela simnike ithuba Nkosi yami, comrade Angela, sicela usilide kule nkonzo because you are burning.
Oh, Angela, go.
No. Yes, we have to be realistic. Yes, it's not easy to break through, but I know that I've seen it. I've seen publishers having open calls for submissions of fresh, new manuscripts, never been seen writer, not been tried or tested. So I do think it's, every now and then when you're ready to put your word out there, just maybe Google like open submissions or open calls, publishing companies. It's not as bad as it seems. Otherwise, we wouldn't have up and coming writers that we only discover this year or just last year. It's not like all the doors are closed. It is difficult. They are pedantic in terms of style and how you present your work and all of that. They don't censor you. That's another thing I want to also highlight. My work doesn't, like, they don't say, no, take out this stuff. We can't relate to it because it's too black or it's too ghetto or it's too, I mean, if you read my books, it just goes to the top floor. Nobody says, no, that's too sexual or that's too this or that's too that. And you can fight for your work. That's another thing. You can fight for, like I fought for endings that I wanted because I understood my characters. I understood where I'm going with the story. So an editor will be like, this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, no, it makes sense to me because I'm writing about people that I'm writing about people like me. I know this is what this person would do in this situation. So we're sticking with it. So it's not like this ugly world. It's a tougher world to get into, but once you're in, it gets easier.
Yeah, I know Penn Macmillan was asking for young writers, especially in the commercial, the popular fiction, genre. And I was there and I was thinking, well, this is great. They really just embracing popular fiction, commercial fiction, and I think it was a good thing.
Yeah, and I don't know how just Penn Macmillan. I think it was. There's Chakana as well. And then Utabi, so Blackbird Publishing, black female publisher, and she's great. So there's a lot going on. So don't be disheartened and think that that's a closed door that you'll never get into.
No, man.
Okay, guys, you heard it from the horse's mouth. You heard it from a comrade, Angela. So I'm not going to dispute any of that. You heard those names, both Penn Macmillan, Chakana. You heard all of those names. So I think we can pass that question.
Blackbird Publishing.
Mam Dolly has been able to join us, but I'm going to go through a few of the questions until I get to a place where there are questions that relate to Pensalb. One Palesa Mokorosi is asking, I'd like to know if I've never been fearful of your planned work having already been published by someone else. Okay, it's sounding a bit strange. What she's trying to say is that if something similar or a similar plot already exists, and so yours may not be very interesting or captivating since something of that kind has already been published and readers are familiar with it. She is asking, is that a challenge?
No, okay, let me take that one. So it's not necessarily a challenge. One of my books is called The 30th Candle. It's about 4 female friends. They're about to turn 30. They're facing challenges that we face. They're questioning their life decisions. Must I get married? Must I do this? Am I on the right career track? And so on. So that book came out in 2009, I think. And then a similar book by my friend and fellow author, Nozizwe Jele, but she published as Cynthia Jele at the time. She came out with Happiness is a 4-letter word, which is now a film. Those books came out probably about 7 or 8 months or a year after each other. So if the story is going back to that presentation, I'm sounding like a school teacher. So if the story is compelling enough, it's well crafted, it's different in its own way, it's got its own strong themes in its own way, then there's room for because readers, just because a reader likes 30th Candle, they might not like Four Letter Word, or they might like Happiness, or they might not like 30th Candle, just because the book speaks to them, whichever book speaks to them differently. So I don't think that's something that you should be shy about or concerned about.
Yeah. And there are a lot of similar books, but also the voices are different. But the storyline is just similar. I mean, the story of a girl meets a guy and they fall in love, and it goes and goes and goes to the end. They get married, they have children. I mean, that's a story that's been written forever and ever, by international and local. And I mean, we grew up reading those Mills and Boon stuff. The storylines are always the same, but the writers are different, so the voices are different. So people are going to love all of them or some of them. So it's not really a problem.
Okay, great stuff. Mam Dolly has joined us. Mam Dolly, how are you? I think you are muted, ma'am.
I think I'm muted, yes. Thank you. How are you, Ayanda?
Okay. I'm fine, thank you. We met, well, we got to chat a little bit earlier, and I know you've got a lot on your plate, but thank you for joining us for this session. I've already done your amazing introduction, so I don't need to reintroduce you again. But for those who don't know, you do represent PenSouth.
Yes.
I had a question earlier, and the question was around listening to Dudu speak, was around the children in the rural areas, rural communities, disadvantaged communities. You know, what are we doing as PenSouth to reach out to those communities, to unearth the talent that is in those communities, especially because if we are talking rural, if we are talking emalokishini, then it's kuluma ngolwimi lethu kahle kahle, and that is your mandate.
Thank you very much for that question, Ayanda. You know, issues such as, or aspects that touch the communities, especially young children, we consider to go in partnership with the departments like education, social development, any department that is relevant. So we are in partnership with a Department of Education to see what is it that we can do, because research has shown that literacy levels in South Africa are extremely low, to an extent of not affording the children to master some of the subjects and knowledge like mathematics and science. So we are in partnership with the Department of Education to see how we can reach the rural and even actually the urban areas to elevate the status of literacy in our African languages especially.
Okay. Okay. That's I suppose that's interesting. It kind of puts us in a sure, it doesn't give us progress, does it? I know that you guys are working, but what programs do we have in place that are specifically looking at unearthing this talent? And I'll tell you why I asked the question. So when I was asking the question, I was saying to Dudu, I can just remember back in the day, you know, there were those children who were just natural storytellers, you know, and everybody would be.
You know, I didn't hear a word, Ayanda, you are cutting. I think the reception
is not. Okay, can you hear me now?
The reception is not good. You are cutting.
Okay,
I didn't hear your question.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I was saying the reason I was asking the question is because, if I can give you context, is because when I was speaking to Dudu, I was talking about remembering the child in the rural areas or elokishini who would be the center of attraction because they had these marvelous magical stories that they would tell all the other kids. And of course, then we went onto a discussion about how even as parents, like, we don't understand the creative industry, we don't actually understand creativity as a whole. And sometimes this is why such children who are gifted creatively end up not pursuing their destiny, because they don't even understand that that is a gift that can be commercialized. And so I think that is what my question speaks to. But also to say, maybe then I want to throw this as a sub question to the panel around ghostwriting, because I can be a really brilliant storyteller, and I can be able to articulate story in my head, but maybe I'm not able to articulate it well on paper. How do you feel about the concept of ghostwriting? And if we're talking about literacy issues in our rural areas and in our townships, then we're saying, even though there are people or there are children who have these brilliant stories in their heads, if they're limited by being able to express themselves, articulate themselves because of the level of education, then we are failing them. So this is my question. It's a broad question. It's a very broad question. It is to say, okay, there's the element of, I have stories in my head. I'm able to tell story, but maybe I don't know how to put story on paper. What would be your advice? Angela, Dudu, Mamtoli?
And we must remember, Ayanda, that PenSALP has got structures in provinces. So the structure of the national language boards in the provinces take care of issues like these, to make sure that they really go down to the ground, to the foot of communities. And I know for sure that the issue of writing, especially of young girls, to voice their silence, is taken care of. So it's not that PenSALP is doing nothing about it. There is support out there, and that is driven by the provinces.
Okay, that's great.
Yes.
So if people wanted more information, they could go onto your website and find out where your regional offices are.
Yes, of course.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that we're on the ground and we're close to the people, because if we're talking language, then we're talking language and writing, then we definitely need to be looking at our rural communities and our townships. I have a young offender who says, I'm an author, she's 19, and she says, I'd like to ask how to get my book exposure without involving the publishing house. I think, Dudu, you've covered quite a bit about that. I think that has been answered. How do we, this is from Retabile Posa. She says, how do we empower women who want to write in their mother tongue? English is not friendly to everyone.
I'm happy for that question, Ayanda, because I heard Dudu was emphasizing, I got a sense of her not really encouraging writing in African languages, which sort of disappointed me, because we must remember that African languages have been, seriously pinched by pre-colonial thinking, that African languages do not matter. African languages they cannot give you a salary on the table. Now, I would like to say to Retabile, when you have your language in your head, and as Angela has explained, when you have the plot, you have your characters, you have your all those elements, literary that she mentioned, you can be able to write. You just need to be workshopped by a person who has got experience in that. That is my take. That's all I can say to Retabile. Maybe Dudu and Ayanda can add on that.
Dudu, you spoke a lot on it. I think you were explaining more the commercializing aspect of a book that's written in an indigenous language. So maybe you can respond to what Uma is saying.
I was not actually discouraging the writing and publishing in our languages. I was explaining why writers are not doing it, and it is also the fact that commercially it's not viable, and nobody is trying to write a book and not be able to sell it. Even when it comes to retail, you hardly ever find a book that is written in our languages unless it's Africa Day, Africa Month, Heritage Day, and all of that. So what I'm saying is, it's important. It's we have to write in our own languages, especially not just in writing, in all the arts. Our languages have to be used, but then we have to go back and start from the ground. We have to start fixing from the ground, and just try to make it more, more viable commercially for people to be even interested in wanting to write in our languages. I'm sure people want to read in our languages, but writers are also
Hello, Dudu, can you hear me? Okay, so I can hear you. I'm just going to wait for
Can you
the
hear
rest
me?
of everybody to come back. Yes, Ma'am Dolly, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Great stuff.
So what has essentially happened, because we cut off, I've lost track of the questions, the history of all the questions.
Oh, shucks.
Yes.
Oh, I think we are left with. We've lost quite a lot of them. We are left. I think we are left with 93 so far, out of the 200 we had. Was it 200 something?
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think it's a matter of connection, because I see on mine it says your connection seems to be low, or maybe it's from that side of webinar server.
So guys, I'm going to ask you to please, Angela, can you hear me, so that the audience knows that you are here and you can be heard? Dudu, can you hear me? Ma'am Dolly, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, Ayanda.
Okay, so let us continue with the conversation, and I think we're back online.
Okay.
So Dudu was still explaining the commercial side of writing in indigenous languages and how that might be a hindrance, but not necessarily to say that she's discouraging people from writing in indigenous languages. Is that what I'm
Yes.
hearing, Dudu? No, I think they can hear you now. I think they can hear you
Maybe
now.
now.
I,
Okay.
Ma'am Dolly, are
Sorry,
you
but
back
I think
on?
I was
Because I have
done.
a question for you.
Yes, I'm back on.
Okay, I can't see you. Sorry.
Though I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. All right. So I think maybe let me put it this. Let me try and maybe unpack a little bit of this. I think it's definitely more important for us to write in our indigenous languages. I think we have to look at what we are doing with children's content first and foremost, to start introducing our children to the language. I think that is vital. I think that is important. I think there must be more focus and emphasis on what we are doing to introduce our children to our indigenous literature, right? Because it becomes challenging for a child who's never read a word of Zulu or Sisuthu or Setswana to start reading isiZulu at 18. It becomes a problem. It becomes problematic. And of course, their default choice of books would then be your English books. So I think this is where we are saying then the commercialization of the content becomes a problem, because I also don't want to write a book just for the sake of writing a book so it can sit on my shelf and I can show everybody that I've written a Zulu book. I want to write a book because I know I can turn it into commercial content. And I also want to say that we must defy the stereotypes, because one of the big stereotypes that I used to hear was that Black people don't read. And I saw it with many of you guys, the people that are authors on this platform. I've seen it with your books, I've seen it with my book. Black people read, they want to read their content. But what we have done is we have a niche market in your urban areas. So Black people are reading our content, because we are here with them, and the content that we are writing for them is relatable for them. It reminds them of back home, it reminds them of Elokshini, it reminds them of wherever, and they can relate, but they have access to your distribution channels. The problem for me has been, how do we make our books, so if I'm going to write in isiZulu, isiTswana, how am I going to make my books accessible for that market? And I think that is where the challenge is.
Yes. You know, when Dudu mentioned the viability and viability of our African languages, I thought to myself, this should be taken up, you know, to be an event on itself, to come up with strategies. You know, it needs a focus on itself, to come up with strategies on how do we really make African languages to be, you know, to be attractive and to be commercially viable. So it really, it's another discussion for another day. It's very big. It's very big for now to discuss it
to
now.
Unpack here.
But as you say, to unpack here. But as you say, I do completely agree with you when you say, people say it's a stereotype when you say black people don't read. I've listened to one of your YouTubes, Ayanda. I know your passion is with young girls, especially at schools. And I was very worried that you have this passion for these young girls to be readers of tomorrow, to be writers of tomorrow. But the language that is used, you know, to penetrate these spaces is English. Why is it not African languages? And, you know, it goes back to parents. It goes back to communities. Communities, you know, communities, we live by the communities. So this is a discussion for another day. It's a very huge aspect.
It is, Matoli, and I think it's so huge in that we have to get to a place where we decolonize the commercial or the value chain system. This is what it needs. It requires that we decolonize the value chain system, because even now, as Ayanda, when I deliver my messages, and you know this, you know this, you know that my children don't speak they don't speak at home. They speak Sisuthu, they speak isiZulu, Ekai. My children speak our languages at home, and it's my big. It's not a passion. It's who I am, and I've often been very offended when I've had to explain why my children speak my language at home, because nobody is asking Afrikaners why ingane isikhuluma isiBhunu ekhaya, you know. But you see then problem becomes, so when I'm doing my videos, I have to craft the content in such a way that the wider audience can have access to it, because I'm no longer just about South Africa, but I have people in Zambia, in Eswatini, in Namibia, we have people in Zimbabwe, we have people in the UK, we have people in the US who are tuning in and listening. So I remember, for instance, when I did the video on Isthembu, it was all Zulu. It was mainly 90% Zulu. And the feedback I got was from people who said, but you've excluded us from the conversation because I'm Zambian and I can't hear what you're saying, but it's an issue that affects me as well. So I think we have to be clear that sometimes when it comes to the commercialization aspect of content, it does become difficult, because it really is about decolonizing the structures and building our own structures. And like Umam Doli says, it's a conversation for another day. Mam Doli, I want to ask you a question here. Does PenSALP provide any financial support to women authors? This is from Nozuko Stimela.
If I have to answer that one, there are projects within PenSALP which can be financed to to help writers in languages of the country. But there are conditions. I must say there are requirements. So if they can go into our websites or the provinces, communities can access that information. We have different projects within PenSalp.
Okay, great stuff. And I
Yes.
think that's probably the same question for Enozugo Stimelo. Says that she's written a children's literature book in isiXhosa, published it last year, and she's struggling with marketing the book and even printing it because she's still a student and has no money. What help can be provided for people like her? She's speaking specifically to printing and marketing the book. Is there any help that PenSalp as an organization would provide for somebody like this?
You know, if the viewer can contact the province, I think the viewer will get response from the province. As I said, there are projects that focus specifically on languages. As long as it's a project that will contribute in the development of a language that is officially recognized, then the province will be able to help in that. And I want to encourage the viewers, Ayanda, that there are PenSalp provinces. PenSalp offices in the provinces. Communities must make use of those offices because they are there in order to reach out. You know, so everything cannot operate from the head office. So communities must go there, find out what is in here for us, what is in here for us in languages, what is in here for us in African languages. So communities must access those and use those offices in the provinces.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you for that. So Nozugo, you can go to the website www.pensalp.org just to find out where the regional offices of PenSalp are and which one is closest to your area, so that you can have a frank and face-to-face discussion with them about how they can assist you, as long as it's about promoting and preserving our languages. Even if it is not money that they are able to assist you with, I'm sure they can point you in the right direction. And I think that's the other thing that people need to understand, that sometimes it's not always just about getting the funding, getting the money in organizations like PenSalp, but it's also about the advice, and connecting the network and connecting you with the right people, connecting you with people that are going to be able to assist you. It's important to not take that for granted. There are a number of comments that are coming through. Lungi Mnyamana saying that the digital world is making us global citizens. Difficult to choose a language when you want to build global audiences. That's an interesting question, or an interesting remark, rather. But I think it talks to exactly what I was trying to say. But again, it shouldn't limit us in preserving our own languages, because in as much as China is global, their books are written in their languages.
Yes,
that's true.
As much as China is global, their books are written in their languages.
Yes, and that's my point. That's my point, Ayanda. China is global, but they use their Chinese languages. Why are we not? I mean, somebody once said, translation is the language of translations. I did understand when Dudu said translating, giving somebody your work to translate changes. At times it changes your line of, your thought. But I mean, if you have a book in English, like your book, Ayanda, the most beautiful book that you have written, Unbecoming to Becoming. If I remember your title well, I mean that content is it's good. It's good for the young girls. But how do they access it in their own language? Translation. You go translation. You go to the translation route. So we shouldn't just look at English as the only language that is making things, that's giving life to things. Yes. So
Thank
that's
you,
my
Ma.
take.
We are working on translating the book because I want every rural and township young girl to have that book.
Great.
And Pensalt is going to help me in the process.
and about the viewers, we are asking, when I commented that viewers should go to the provinces. I mean, if you can go to the office physically, there is a website of Pensalt. If viewers and communities can access the website of Pensalt, there's more than enough information on projects that are there, how to access them, and the like. There is a Facebook. I mean, Pensalt is on social media. We need people just need to be communities and viewers just need to update themselves on regular basis. Understand what projects are there that can help them to achieve what the project that they have.
Thank you so much for that. I've got a comment from Cardian Walters. He or she says, I teach language planning at the University of West Indies in Jamaica. I would love if one of you ladies would do a Zoom presentation to my students. That's just a comment that's coming through. So we've got a wide audience of people that's come through. Mam Joyce Madiba says, thank you, May Lavane, for informing our clients about Pensalt offices. Please, South Africans, let us make use of the offices. Again, reiterating that let us make use of the offices. The offices are there. Alinde nina ukuthi nina nisukume niye khona. Ngeke sihambe siyonqonqozela endlini zenu sinibuza ukuthi niney'ncwadi na. Nina fanele nize kuthina nizositshela ukuthi ninani bese thina siyanitshela ukuthi singanisiza kanjani. Right. An interesting question. As we wrap up, I want to talk about marketing because this is also my speciality. Mteteleli Mangunyana says, I just want to check, are there any strategies that one can employ to market books online in order to earn an income? People in rural areas do not have access to internet, and taking the manuscripts to printers is also expensive, and she says, thanks. Oh, you know, it at the end of the day, I think it does boil down to politics of affordability for you to be able to carry out your project. I think where there's a dream, there's a way, and I think people should not be discouraged because for some reason I can't print my manuscript. If you have access and you are able to type, then type and save that. And like I said, one of the things Dudu said she did was she started on WordPress and she started posting her content there, and this got people reading and introducing her to South African audiences, but also positioning her as a writer in the style in which she then introduced the Hlomu series and the sequels that followed after that. So I think we live in a world where people have access to social media now, and whether you are in rural areas or you are a location, you have access to lalelan guys. If niyakwazi ukulandela o AKA no Bonang no Bani, then you have access, right? Then you have access. Let's use our data for things that build us as well. Not to say you mustn't follow your favorite celebrities, but let's also use it for things that empower us and that build us. So I think what I'm trying to say is, for me, what worked is that, again, like Tutu did, I started introducing my content on social media. In fact, the call for me to write a book started on social media because of the conversations I was having and because of what I was writing on social media. And even when that pressure came, I still didn't think, I could write a book, because, like I said, not everybody is a writer. I had to do a lot of introspection to find out if really this was something I needed to do. But when the call came, and I say it was a divine call, when the call came for me to write that book, I knew that the time had come. But the reason the book did as well as it did was that there was an already ready audience before I launched the book who was looking forward to more. So let us use our social media platforms to entice, to position ourselves, to introduce ourselves as writers to the world and to our audiences. I think it's a good start. And the best part about it is that in Mahala, all it's gonna cost you is data and your creativity.
Exactly. That's true. It's very true.
Yes.
Right. I think we've kind of come to a place where we can now wrap up. I will at one point, Mamdoli, I would like us to have a conversation, and I'm putting this out there to the organization, to you, Dudu, to you, Angela, to say, I really would like us to have a conversation about how do we decolonize the structures that have hindered our progress and our success, that because the content is there. We can unearth the talent, but the issue becomes ownership and how does it work for me? Because again, as somebody who's a thriving writer, I become disgruntled if out of all of this, I'm only going to get 5%.
That's true.
Or I'm going to get 10%. I become disgruntled. I become discouraged, and I don't want to do it. I fall in love with the art and the craft because it's not working for me. So how do we come together as a community of people who are already in the publishing sector, and how do we say how are we going to decolonize the structures that hinder our progress? Again, we started using us as Avad Media, my own publishing house, my own media house. We started using black distributors to do the same ones that you use. There are very few that are reliable, very few that are reliable. So how do we put in the structures? Because we want to sell through our brothers and sisters, and it creates employment and work for them. Because let me tell you, anybody who's telling you there's no money in books is lying. There is money in literature. There is money in literature. We have a captive audience that is sitting in rural areas, that is sitting in townships that we have not captured. We have captured audiences that we have not tapped into. We have money that belongs to us as a Black people that we have not tapped into using our languages. And so for me, I think the next big question, the next big seminar, the next big question for us to answer is how do we unlock potential around the entire value chain system so that we own our content, but that it makes livelihood sense for us, because American authors are sitting somewhere on an island. And I don't even want an island. I just want to build a school. You know what I mean? I just want to build a school. So I think Mamdoli, please consider that in the next forum that you guys are going to have. And as we wrap up, just closing words from everybody. I'll start with you, Dudu.
Closing words. I'm just going to. This has been great. Thank you. It's been amazing. It's a very important conversation. But look, I just want to say, as somebody who has been able to publish and has just made a name for herself in this space, it's never full. It's never just, the space is never going to be full. There's always space for more people to come and write and publish and write about anything. Actually, it doesn't have to be popular fiction. It doesn't have to be love story or just completely Black. So can people just be, especially the young ones, can you just not be this fearful? just write, send the books. Maybe somebody will reject them, but eventually somebody will accept them and you will improve. It's open. The space is open. Just come, write, bring those books,
The space
publish
is
them.
open.
The
It's
very
space
open.
is
And it's
open.
very big. It's big enough for all of us. So let's do that.
Thank you for that. Angela? Mam Toli? Closing words from Mam Toli. Okay, whilst I wait for Mam Toli, there's a question from Lungi Nyamana that is, Mam Toli, are you back? There's a question, the chapter writing, are you separating chapters as you write to make it easy for your editor? Yay, nay? Must you separate the chapters as you write?
We're not thinking about the editor. It's not the editor.
Okay. Alrighty, I'm waiting for Mam Toli to. Yes, Mam Toli is back. Thank you, Mam Toli. I'm just closing comments from you, Ma, as we wrap up this conversation.
Audio is.
Mam Toli's audio is gone.
Thank you.
We're gonna try and get her back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when you can't see me, my connection is very low here. And
okay.
But as long as you can hear the voice, right?
Yes, we can, Ma.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Ayanda. On my closing remark, I wanted to comment on your issue of decolonizing the structures. We are fully aware as PENSALP that these structures are the very structures that hinder the progress, especially of languages that have been marginalized pre-colonial era. And but I do not want to say we must mind the mandate of PENSALP, but I must say it, that PENSALP has a specific mandate. But where we see that there's a need that overlaps in PENSALP's mandate, we partner with different departments in order to achieve that which seem not to be falling in the PENSALP mandate. For instance, if I have to mention the idea of publishing, I mean, if you can imagine, if PENSALP had a publishing house, how easy will it be for African publishers to go and publish their work at PENSALP? But now it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it is not the mandate of PENSALP, that publishing, but it can be a project that can help publishers, especially from the previously marginalized languages, to be able to publish. And we really are working hard as PENSALP to make sure that languages through writing, through literacy, through education are developed and are used. And one thing that is very important for societies and communities to understand about languages is that you learn a language, you develop a language by speaking it. A language will never develop. A language will never develop if it is not spoken, if it's not used. So we cannot be saying we are developing our languages according to the mandate of PenSALP, yet we don't use them. So I would like to encourage viewers and communities out there that please let us use our language, because a language will never develop if it is not used. And that is my take. I don't know if I have to use this opportunity to thank everybody, Ayanda, or are you still coming to that?
I think I can close and you can thank everybody,
Okay.
or you can thank everybody and I can close. I think use the opportunity to thank everyone, Ma.
Okay. I was actually going to start thanking our deputy chairperson, Mrs. Pritha Dabedin, for giving especially me the opportunity to thank the guests in the Pan South African Language Board House and our presenters. This event celebrated our women. We remember Lillian Goi and many others, and especially you, the honorable women writers, who blessed the PenSALP home with the high-valued, tremendous erudite expertise in writing, and took out valuable time of your busy schedule. The caliber of women we have here in this workshop is quite amazing. And on behalf of PenSALP, I would like to extend a special thanks to Mayor Angela Makholwa for inspiring the young women of South Africa. And thank you indeed for sharing your expertise and skill, Angela, of writing. Your presentation on turning creative ideas into stories was really very great. And I am certain that viewers have taken something home from your presentation. It was really valuable, and thank you for that. And to Dudu, Ms. Dudu Busani, PenSALP is very, very grateful to have you in this workshop and share information on publishing. And this is one of those steps that most people get stuck, as and Ayanda has already indicated. To both of you, Dudu and Angela, PenSALP says, if time was money, then today you have spent millions for us. And thank you for that. You gave us your time, the most precious gift of all. And thank you for making yourselves available for and to PenSALP. You are the role models of most of young girls and women out there. I was surprised when I mentioned the name of Ayanda. And one of the girls was so excited and, very bright on the eyes. And I said, it means Ayanda is your role model. And she said, completely. You can't miss to read. You can't miss to read Ayanda's books. And I especially like to thank you, Ayanda, for facilitating the workshop. You did it extremely well. You did it well. It was great. And I was confused between, you mentioned you are an actor, then you are an author, then there's facilitation in there. And you did it extremely well, more than facilitators, actually, much better than facilitators. It shows that it's on your fingertips. and you did it very great.
Thank you, ma'am.
By the way, Ayanda is a woman writer who masters the ink, and your questions, your comments, your driving the whole event was really very great. Smooth riding for you. And I must mention our deep, sincere and appreciation of the honorable erudite viewers. This event would not be possible had it not been our viewers. We recognize your valuable, stimulating questions and comments. And of course, PenSALP is going to take into head the comments that you have made and put them into our database of projects to come in developing and growing our indigenous languages and all other languages of the country. And to colleagues and viewers, I am sure that we can agree that no program like this one can become successful with a single hand. It requires planning, it requires arrangement, it requires support. And I want to say I extend my big thank you to Ntombinhle Hulu Hulu and her crew. Through you, PenSALP hopes to have more of such beautiful engagements with women, especially women writers. Questions are asked, comments are made, and through them, let us take the mandate of PenSALP forward, especially with focus on women, girls, and small young boys out there in schools. But lastly, PenSALP would like to thank Mail and Guardian Media for taking care of every digital logistic for the event. Without you, Sean, the workshop would not have materialized, and we are sorry for waking you up in this cold weather today to make sure that everything was gonna run very, very smooth. My words are really not enough to express the gratitude of PenSALP for the contribution of all of us who made this event of 200 women a success. Thank you, and thank you indeed. Ke a leboga.
Siyabonga ma, siyabonga kakhulu. And as I close, I want to thank you, Ma, because you've thanked all of us, but you haven't thanked yourself. Thank you for availing your time and being able to answer the questions and being here for the viewers and the listeners, the people who really need you, or who need to hear from you. Thank you very much for being gracious in your answers and challenging us, and being honest in how you challenge us. Thank you so much. And as I close, I just want to say, for the many people that know me, you know I love language, and I'm fully invested in the language of our people. It has always been my belief that our history and heritage is hidden in the words of our stories. Every word you can unpack if you understand ukuthi igama lisho ukuthini, unpack inkosikazi, and I'm going to use these particular words because they speak to women, and I'm speaking to women's month. Mangabe sikhuluma ngenkosikazi, kazi being the great, and inkosi being inkosi enkulu, the great king. In the understanding of our words, we are able to understand our own heritage. Nokuthi soban. A lot of what we are seeing as the social ills in our society is because so much of who we are has been chipped away. So much of who we are has been eroded, and a lot of that identity erosion has to do with our language. And because we are not fully invested in our languages. We are unable to go back to ekhaya. That's why abantu mangabe bethi izwe alibuye, ngeke ngithi mina izwe ngeke libuye ngoba thina sakabuye, fanele kubuye thina kuqala ngaphambi kokuthi kubuye izwe. Izwe lizobuya mase sibuyele thina, sibuyele thina kuqala kuthina self. And self is identity, and embedded in that identity is a lot around the language. Ungakushiya konke lokho kunye, but i-language yethu iphelele. It tells us exactly who we are, where we come from. It tells us our migration story. It tells us why certain things were done. You know, there are things that are done today. Sometimes I'll explain to my children, it's no, but what is the word? And they'll come to me and they'll say, this is the word. And I'll say, unpack the word. When you unpack the word, you will understand the history and why certain things were done. And this is why I love language, because embedded in our language is to self. Our very self is embedded in our words and in our language. And as I close, I want to just say, you know, for the longest time, our narrative as women has been written for us, and we've never really had an opportunity to have a voice and an opportunity to write a narrative for ourselves. I'm believing and I'm hoping that platforms like these will open up the scale to women who have been deprived of writing that narrative for themselves, because we must not think that it is the Angelas and the Dudus of this world who can speak English and the Ayandas of this world who can speak English, who can only rewrite the narrative for African women. And let us also believe that our women in rural areas, our women in townships can rewrite the narrative for themselves. And so platforms like this for me are highly appreciated. So in closing, I want to say thank you to everybody who has been a part of this. We are paving the way for a bigger movement. Change is really coming. And thank you to everybody that has tuned in. And once again, thank you to Penn South for the opportunity. God bless Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was nice.
Bye.
Bye.